Hello everyone. Welcome back. If you've been here before, then I'm glad you come back. And if you're new to the channel, well, I'm glad you're here. I hope you hear something that makes you want to stay, or at least come back. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Clayton. I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, and I've been clean and sober since February 21st, 2021. I apologize for the way I sound. Actually, for the first time, I've been watching over some of the recordings that I've made, and man, I don't know if it's just because I'm my own worst critic or what, but it feels like I look like well, for one, because my talking or my speech is not all that concise because I have no teeth, so it's hard for me to say certain things, and my mouth is constantly dry. I mean, I don't drink enough water as I should. I wish I did, but I don't. And since I've been in recovery, I drink more coffee. Which definitely isn't good. But there's certain things that I'm trying to accomplish. Like I'm up to doing 4 different exercises a day now, and I started that like 70 some odd days ago. I started with one exercise, and then 40 days into it, I added another exercise, and then another 15 days later, added another exercise to a few days after that, and now I'm up to 4 exercises a day. And as I said, I've been even doing it for the last 75 days or something like that. Yeah, I'm kind of proud of myself because sometimes I might have come close to forget, but I would still make sure that I would force myself to do it regardless of whatever time I would remember. Okay, we're going to continue on in the basic text. We're still on the personal stories. Sowing the seed. N.A. helped this Israeli addict rediscover his love of life. He had always felt like an outsider before he got clean. Now he has a home group and understands shipping in the spiritual understands the fellowshipping to be a spiritual principle. In Israel, we sing at meetings. If it's your turn to get a key tag, we sing a song that has become an NA anthem in Israel. It's a song about a simple guy who doesn't want much, and this guy has made a mistake here and there, but he can see the future, and it looks good as long as we all stick together. We sing at every meeting. We go to the European conventions, and everyone knows that the Israelites are the newest fellowship. We never stop singing. That was a just kind of tough word to say. Newest. We also have a count up at every meeting. We start by asking if there's anyone attending the meeting for the first time. Then it goes on to 2 weeks, then to 1 month, then up to 3 months, and then 6 months. It can go on and on for up to 20 years. We hug all the newcomers who are courageous enough to say, I have 3 days today. We hug you if you have 2 days clean or 2 years clean. We recruit newcomers to do small group tasks A group may have 12 officers. One newcomer makes the coffee, one brings the cups, the other opens the room, and the other closes it. In my first 3 months clean, I was the key holder. I didn't actually open the meeting, but I held the key until the trusted servant who opened the meeting came. This was so important to me because it showed that I belonged. From my early childhood, I had felt like an outsider. In elementary school, I was never invited to parties and had no friends. I became a real troublemaker. If I couldn't get love, at least I could get attention. At home, I felt as if I was standing in my parents' way. My parents were busy and their careers did the best they could. I grew up with caregivers who took care of me during the day, and I joined my parents when they returned from work. In high school, I became a DJ and played music in the schoolyard, but that attention wasn't enough. I still wasn't content, and after a year of high school, I dropped out. I spent all my free time at the beach using. I was 15 years old. I had 2 years until mandatory military service. My parents gave up hope, and I spent more time in the streets than at home. On my first day in the army, I found what I was looking for: drug partners. I had thought that military service would moderate my drug use, but it turned out I used more and different drugs. It didn't take long to realize I wanted out of the military. I went to an army shrink and told him I was having nightmares. I was so high I could only mumble, and I was sent to a psychiatric hospital for observation. It was an open hospital, so I received no medication. I was there during the day, and in the afternoon, I left to hang out with my friends to get high. 2 months later, they discharged me. I was free. I took the first flight to Amsterdam. A friend picked me up from the airport, and on the way to his house, he offered me heroin. I told him I don't do heroin, I only do cocaine. Ironically, a year later, heroin was my favorite drug. I was homeless, no job, no food, but as soon as I put my hands on money, I spent it all on drugs. At night, I went to the marketplace and took leftover food from the garbage. I slept in empty apartments with no heat or water, but I was sure that I was on the top of the world. 6 months later, I was back in Tel Aviv selling drugs. I thought that I was an important man. I justified my actions by telling myself that I needed to sell drugs to keep my habit. In recovery, I realized that one of the reasons I sold drugs was to keep people around me. Eventually, I was beaten, lonely, and alienated. I felt like a failure, and worst of all, I wasn't ready to stop using. One day, a using friend suggested we go to an NA meeting. He told me that NA was a group of addicts who meet together and help each other. At that time, there was only 7 NA meetings a week in Israel, and they were all in Tel Aviv. The only reason I went to the first NA meeting with my friend was because I knew that we were going to go out afterwards and buy more drugs. There were 40 or 50 people at the meeting, some of whom I knew. This was the first time in my life I saw junkies who had stopped using. I didn't believe that this was possible. I went to another meeting a few days later and I saw people laughing and enjoying themselves. But I was not ready to give up. Today, I know that a seed was planted inside me at those first meetings. I started to believe that there was another way. People used to tell me, "You've got so much potential." I didn't want to hear about going to school, having a steady job, or building a family. I never completed anything. I love NA because it is spiritual, abstract, and endless. We don't measure recovery by our accomplishments. We do the best we can each day. It took me another 10 years of pain and suffering before before I was ready to surrender. I lost all my friends and stopped communicating with my family. I isolated myself to the point of not even answering the phone. I stopped functioning as a dealer. I stopped eating and let my personal hygiene go. I slipped into a long period of deep depression. The only thing I did was stay home alone and use drugs. There I was, a guy who loved life, loved to party, loved company, suddenly thinking about ending it all. I felt like there was no hope, and that was the biggest shock for me. I went to an NA meeting. It was summer. The room was hot, but I was shivering and wearing a heavy leather coat. There were only two other people there, and they were arguing about how to set up the meeting. It almost came to blows. I knew from my previous experience that NA was much more than this incident. Deep inside me, I knew that NA could save my life. Soon people came, and even though I didn't know anybody, I felt like I was among friends. Someone reached out to me, and I joined him in another meeting, and that night. Those first meetings were very significant. I kept coming back and stayed clean. At some point, I understood that if I wanted to stay clean this time, I had to make a decision to keep an open mind and get involved. I really wanted to be part of the fellowship. Today I know that fellowshipping is a spiritual principle. During my first years in recovery, I used to go to a meeting in Arab neighborhood not far from my house. At this meeting, Arab and Israeli members spoke Hebrew and shared about recovery from addiction. When it comes to NA, there are no politics involved. We sit in meetings together, we serve together, we celebrate our recovery together. I chose a home group and committed myself to that group. I took a service commitment. I opened the meeting space, cleaned the floors there, and got it ready for the meeting. Today, I am still part of that same home group. It is a place where people can find me, and I know that I can find my friends there too. I have a sponsor, and I work the steps. But most importantly, I keep coming back no matter what. Until I got clean, the only job I had was dealing drugs. I worked a few hours a couple of days a week and made a lot of money in recovery. The first job I had was delivering newspapers on my scooter. I was making less in 1 month than I made in 1 day dealing drugs. But I delivered the papers and used the time for meditation in motion. Today, I work with homeless addicts, and I went back to school to learn how to be better at my job. It is a miracle that this addict has a job helping others. I learned to respect my family, and they see the changes I have made through the program. 6 years ago, I lost my father. He was ill for a long time, and before he slipped into a coma, I was able to make my amends with him. He told me that I looked good and asked if I was to going to those meetings. He forgave me. I wanted him to get well, but prayed for acceptance of God's will. When he died, the pain was so strong I could not stop crying. And seeing my mother hurting as well was devastating. I did not know how I was going to get through this. I called a few NA friends, and within a half an hour, I was surrendered with love and support. This was my first experience of handling such severe emotions clean. I was sure I was going to break down, but through prayer and the support I got from my NA friends, the opposite happened. I found the strength and courage to go through the mourning process without using. Not only that, but I found that I was able to be there for my mother while she grieved. This was a humbling experience. When I first got clean, I thought that I was giving up so much. My friends, my status, my good times, even gave up listening to music at first. Now I know that I've received much more in return. I have lots of new friends who are recovering addicts, and I am a respected member of society. I'm well appreciated and work. I'm sorry. I am well appreciated at work, and music is still my passion. Once, when I got fired from a job, I was devastated. I was confused about my higher power's intentions for me. I confronted my sponsor with my lack of faith, and he told me to pray and check God's will for me. The pain and the blow to my ego were too big. The fear of how I would pay the rent was overwhelming. My sponsor told me that God has a better plan for me. Later, after some time had passed, I realized how right he was. When I am in pain, I remember that pain is my best teacher. When I have attacks of self-pity, I visualize my higher power looking at me and asking his secretary, "Get me his file." He looks at the file, smiles, and says to his secretary, "This guy doesn't realize all the good things that he is going to get." I am full of hope. I am grateful for everything I have been given. I love you, NA. Wow, what a good story. It's I find it interesting how there's like out of all these personal stories that I read, and it's like every time I get to a point where they're talking about, getting the help that they needed, or finding that path, I guess. Because maybe because that's how it was for me. You know, I I didn't know how to find help or get help, and I was also in a really bad place when before I got clean too, being confined and tortured and a few other things. If you've seen any of my other videos, then you might have come across this story. I won't get into it again, but but yeah, it always hits home for me pretty strongly sometimes. And I once read somewhere, you know, that sometimes when the body leaks, or like when you cry or whatever from other people's pain or sympathy for other individuals, that causes you deep emotion, that it has something to do with some kind of pain that I guess that I'm still holding on to. But it's interesting because you know how life worked out, because in the beginning, it was all about the party and about being around people and just having a good time and afraid of missing out on well on nothing, I guess. And then to realize one day that now you're doing it to excuse me, you're doing it to a point where it's part of your everyday life, and you don't even realize that you're masking pain or emotions, or because you end up spending such a life term being numb. And it wasn't until, like, I've done the steps twice, and it wasn't until actually doing the steps the first time that you know that you end up finding stuff that you didn't know was buried. But anyway, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate every one of you. That it is in my prayer and goals that hopefully one day I can somehow get some teeth where I can start talking normally, and hopefully I need to get my eyes redone so I can get some new glasses, and then hopefully I'll be able to see again properly. But when I'm trying to be as, what, I don't know, what would be normal, considered normal behavior or whatever. I mean, I don't know what that is really. I mean, as I've said in previous um, videos, that you know I have nobody standing over my shoulder to keep me accountable for anything, so, or telling me what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing, and so far I've got like 5 YouTube channels that I'm working on every day, and two of the channels is I dedicated to talking about recovery. And I mean, I wish my subscription and view count was getting a bit higher, faster, but hopefully in time people will notice me. I know a lot of it has to do with the algorithm, and maybe I'm not promoting my videos properly, but I don't have any extra funds, so I can't. I have to do everything on the free side of things, and but I'm hoping my long term goal is to get enough subscribers and viewers that will help my recovery channels get monetized, and then that'll help to actually generate a little bit of income, which then I can start putting towards my channels, which is that's my long term goal. But anyway, thank you again for joining me today. I appreciate every one of you. That was another personal story out of the basic text. If nobody's told you today that they love you, well, I love you. I love you. I love you, and I appreciate all of you. And thank you for showing up. Bye for now.